They said it was just a bridge, a simple shortcut. They claim it a quick fix to make their luxury enclave feel more connected to the main road. But their so-called shortcut sliced right through my land, across my river, and stomped on every ounce of history that bridge once held. And when their shiny slab of arrogance collapsed in front of the entire neighborhood during its grand debut, guess who they tried to blame? Hi, I'm Riley. I live quietly on about 40 acres bordering Millstone Creek, a piece of land I poured my heart and soul into restoring. To me, it isn't just property. It's heritage, peace, control over my own world. I even maintain a small hydroelectric dam upstream, left behind by the original homestead-era relic from when people respected land, not just paved over it. Up north, there's Evergreen Heights, a hyper-manicured HOA fortress run by Carol Whitmore, or as she insisted on being called, President Whitmore. Carol is what you'd get if a Stepford wife read too much Ayn Rand. Rigid, performative, and obsessed with turning everything into her version of perfection. She and a handful of land investors had big plans to modernize Evergreen Heights, starting with a new private bridge to connect their gated paradise to the county road. That bridge, it was supposed to run right over my river, on my land. I found out by accident. A flyer shoved under a rock near my driveway, inviting me to a community outreach meeting that was anything but. I showed up anyway. Carol clicked through a PowerPoint filled with CGI renderings of a concrete monstrosity, a massive, multi-lane bridge punching through my trees, sitting on top of the remains of the old stone bridge my great-uncle built by hand. I stood up. That land is mine. You can't build there. Carol didn't flinch. We're happy to discuss fair compensation for the temporary inconvenience, she said, like she was negotiating a driveway repaving. There won't be a bridge, I replied, slow and cold. Not on my land. Not ever. But they came anyway. First letters, then surveyors. Then one foggy morning, I went down to the river and found the old bridge obliterated, nothing left but rubble and tire tracks. Carol claimed it had collapsed during an inspection. Coincidentally, a demolition crew and excavator had been nearby. I lawyered up. My attorney, Tessa, hit them with a cease and desist, trespass warnings, and a paper trail a mile long. They paused, but only briefly. Weeks later, I caught wind of them pouring concrete again, this time faster, more aggressively, trying to finish before a court could stop them. They were betting on momentum. I documented everything. Drone footage, photos, daily logs. The bridge they were building was a Joe Clo, slab style, with concrete pillars jammed so close together that any spring melt would turn it into a debris trap. They hadn't just trespassed. They were building something dangerous. And here's the part they never considered: upstream. I had the dam. I know that dam like the back of my hand. I know what happens when you let a bit more water out during a spring dry spell. Nothing catastrophic, just a test. So when Carol announced the grand opening would be Saturday morning, with speeches and a marching band, I decided it was time for a real-world demonstration. The night before, I calibrated the spillway, just enough to raise the river, give it muscle. That morning, I watched from my hidden post by the trees. Balloons bounced. Kids waved flags. Carol wore a sash that said progress, like it was prom. Then the river began to speak. First came the driftwood, thick limbs swept downstream, slamming into the bridge's piers. The crowd didn't notice at first, but I did. The vibration, the tilt, the groan of concrete under pressure. The water rose faster, pulling more debris, wedging it under the flat deck like a battering ram. Then it happened. A crack, sharp and unmistakable. Screams. The middle span buckled. One of the support columns sheared sideways. The deck snapped in two, and half the bridge collapsed into the river like a child's toy. Carol's microphone squealed as the other half tilted violently, tearing away from its anchors and crumbling into the current. No one was on it, but they were close enough to feel the splash. Sirens wailed. Neighbors ran. The banner that read Evergreen Heights Express Access floated downstream like a broken promise. They sued me within a week. They accused me of orchestrating the collapse with malicious dam manipulation. But Tessa was ready. My logs were flawless. The release had been legal, controlled, documented. We brought in an expert witness who reviewed their construction. He called it an engineering insult to nature. They had no permits to build on my land, no structural integrity in their design. And the kicker? Their own contractor had been blacklisted in 2 counties. The judge dismissed their case with prejudice, ordered them to pay my legal fees, ordered them to clean up the wreckage at their own expense. Evergreen Heights was humiliated. Carol resigned. Rumors said she sold her house in secret and left town entirely. I never rebuilt the old bridge. I didn't need to. The river healed. My land healed. And me? I found peace again. So here's my advice if you're ever up against an HOA drunk on power and blind to boundaries. Document everything. Know your rights. And if you control the water upstream, sometimes nature can do what lawyers can't. Drop a comment if you've ever faced down an HOA or a land dispute. I'd love to hear your war stories.